So this tier list thing has been pretty popular for a while, but the only one I can find about planes is absolute garbage. So I've decided to make my own. Now, if I were to do every passenger airliner in existence, it would take up all the time I've currently allocated to messing around on my calculator. So I've decided just to go with the entire Boeing lineup, as well as a few of my favorite planes from other manufacturers. Starting with the S tier, we have the Boeing 757. Now personally, this is one of my favorite planes. Mostly because when I fly in it, I get to explain to all the passengers complaining about boarding times how the plane's engine performance, range, and capacity makes it the perfect mid-market aircraft for long-range, medium to low-demand routes. Now there really is no true replacement currently on the market. Moving on, we have the Boeing 777. This plane had a near-perfect safety record up until Malaysian Airlines just completely destroyed it back in 2014. But otherwise, it's a really solid plane that's only gotten better with the launch of the 777X. Rounding out S tier is the Embraer E190. This regional jet has shown itself to be one of the most efficient and high-performing in the industry. It's not called the profit hunter without reason. Besides stoking the flames of Brazilian nationalism to an almost unhealthy degree, the E190's website does have this pretty cool animation. Moving down to A tier, I'll start with the 787. Although this plane has had several groundings, this is of course to be expected from Boeing. Nonetheless, the plane is pretty revolutionary in its range and efficiency, being the second aircraft ever to receive an ETOPS certification of 330 minutes. Next is the 767. This plane is kind of like the Christian kid at the front of the class. He raises his hand when the teacher asks a question, he gets his work done on time, and will just smile and walk away when you explain how God doesn't exist. Really, the 767 was the first time the Boeing Cube Farms designed something actually logical and reasonably useful. Finishing off A tier is the 747. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of this plane because, fuck the hub and spoke model. But when I suggested putting it in C tier, the behind-the-scenes staff here at ODA went into an absolute frenzy. In all seriousness, the plane actually is a marvel of engineering, and you really have to respect all the work that went into it. I mean, the fact that at least 40% of journalists can actually identify it is pretty impressive. At the start of B tier is the 717. Now, calling this plane Boeing is like saying Oklahoma is a democracy. Sure, it might be true in name, but really the 717 is just a rebranded MD-95. All I can say about this plane is that it's not that bad. As a plane, it gets the job done. But it was launched right before 9/11. Meaning it never sold like Boeing expected. In an application, it's in a kind of awkward place between true regional jets and planes such as the A320 and 737. Next, we have the Bombardier Q400. This Canadian turboprop has formed the backbone of airlines such as Washington State's Horizon, Norwegian airline Widerøe, and countless others. It's all around a reliable plane with solid performance, and is definitely one of my favorites currently on the market. However, its tires are a notorious deer magnet. Rounding out B tier is the 707. While this plane was seriously groundbreaking in its era, being the first truly profitable commercial airliner, it's by no means a viable plane today. Though, try telling that to the Venezuelan Air Force. To start off C tier is the 737. Now, before you pull a TWA 800, let me explain my reasoning.
The airframe's outdated!
Joining the 737 to finish out C tier is the Airbus A340, a prime example of the term Euro trash. In trying to beat Boeing to the ultra-long-haul market, they got utterly bamboozled when the 777 was granted ETOPS 330 clearance just a few years later, rendering the A340's four-engine design obsolete. Thankfully, Lufthansa bought these up like fucking chips at a Mexican restaurant. In the end, though, it should have been longer. In D tier, we have the A380. I mean, it's cool, but come on, it needs more floors if it ever wants to be truly profitable on the Dubai to London corridor. In E tier, we have the 727. It kinda flies. And finally, we get to F tier, the absolute bottom feeders of the passenger aviation ocean. Starting with the MD-11. Yeah, it's hard to get much worse than that. Basically, McDonnell Douglas took the DC-10 and thought, how could we possibly make this any more dangerous? The solution was to obliterate the stability. Typically, the only planes that are designed to be unstable are fighter jets, and this is to increase maneuverability. However, this was the 80s, and oil prices had just ballooned out of this universe. So, to attract buyers, McDonnell Douglas decided to make a plane that prioritized fuel economy. Sounds good on paper, but in practice, this meant taking the DC-10, shrinking the horizontal stabilizer, and, in proper Kerbal Space Program fashion, messing around with the center of gravity until it kind of worked. Because of this, the MD-11 was notoriously impossible to fly, and required flight computers to maintain level flight. This has led to several incidents of the MD-11 flipping over during landing. Next, we have the de Havilland Comet. Well, this was the first passenger jetliner and will be forever immortalized in aerospace history books. What proved to be tragically mortal were the passengers who flew on it.
But just 26 minutes into the flight, it explodes catastrophically. 35 people are dead.
And finally, to round out the entire tier list is the Sukhoi Superjet 100. On paper, it's a pretty run-of-the-mill shitty Russian airliner. But unlike the Tupolevs and Ilyushins of yesteryear, which were more or less put together by Stalin's buddies in their garages, the SJ-100 was launched in 2008, the product of the Russian oligarchy's pseudo-capitalism. But surprisingly, a freer market has actually led to a far worse safety record than even the IL-62, with this crash being attributed to a lightning strike nearby or incompetent Russian pilots.
Oklahoma, where the wind goes whistling down the plain. Oklahoma, where the waving wheat. It sure smells sweet when the wind comes right behind the rain. Oklahoma, every night, my honey lamb and I, every night we sit alone and talk and watch the hawks making lazy circles in the sky. We know we belong to the land, and the land we belong to is grand. So when we say, yo, I-yip-I-O, yay, we're only saying you're doing fine, Oklahoma, Oklahoma, O-K-L-A-H-O-M-A, Oklahoma.